Hello, everybody, and welcome to the September 2021 episode of Libraries Connecting Texas. So glad that you could all be here. There are only 9 of you here right now, but you're going to get a head start on the 2021 Form 470. This is going to be recorded so that other people can watch it too, but the Form 470 changed this year a little bit, and we're going to go over that in detail. I also want to introduce the newest member of our Libraries Connecting Texas team, Tegan Vick. Hi, Tegan.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm a little late. Technical issues.
Oh, it's okay. So we're in the midst of all of the growing pains of getting people added to the webinar and things like that. So please bear with us. So I guess it's time to just go ahead and get started with our September 2021 webinar. As I said, we're going to go over the new Form 470, the competitive bidding process, Category 2 budgets, and the document retention process. Hi, Ida. Thanks for saying hi in the chat. So the summary of Libraries Connecting Texas funding, I just want to let you all know that the numbers of bad things went down and the number of good things went up. So it sounds like there's been some progress over the past month. Last month, it was like $200 and something thousand of disbursements had been made for 2020, and now we're up to $494,124.69. So it looks like somebody's been doing some invoicing. 17 libraries still haven't been invoicing USAC for their discounts yet. And I just want to remind y'all that in order to reap the benefits of E-rate, you have to do the invoicing. That's a really important part. You don't want to do all of this work and not get the money. And 8 service providers still haven't filed their annual certification form. We're going to start sending y'all your the name of your service provider if you're one of those libraries whose service provider hasn't filed their annual certification. This is important because in order to get discounts, USAC is not going to give any funding away until the service provider that's represented on that funding request has filed their annual certification. So it's important for you if your service provider did file that form. So I will hand this on over to Jenny, and she's going to talk about the Form 470.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you here. The last couple of months, we have started mentioning the Form 470 for the upcoming funding year. And so it is time to begin thinking and planning for future technology needs for the upcoming funding year, which starts July 1, 2022. So we are looking at services July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023. If you have a contract that expires on or after June 30th of 2023, you should not need to file a Form 470 because, as you'll remember, for multi-year contracts, you do not have to file a 470 every year like you do a 471. However, if you need to make changes to your contract, whether it's different bandwidth options or moving service or it's anything like that, any changes that need to be made, you may need to file a new Form 470. Typically, contracts will expire the last day of a funding year. However, sometimes contracts expire mid-year due to the way the contract is written and when services start. So if your contract does expire prior to June 30th of 2023 at all, then you will need to file a Form 470 for the remaining months, plus the funding year, the next funding year. And what is a Form 470. So it is an application that you'll file in the E-Rate Productivity Center portal, the USAC portal. It describes the services requested and opens competitive bidding, the competitive bidding process for those services, for getting bids on those services. It may be accompanied by a request for a proposal or an RFP. And generally, a Form 470 is available in Epic 1 year prior to the start of the funding year. So, for example, for funding year 2022, this 470 started and was available July 1st of 2021. So you got plenty of time to file them. Also, if you're month-to-month service and you're not in a contract, you will need to file a Form 470 this year. So the Form 470 this year is a little different. If any of you have gotten into the Epic or One portal and seen the application yet, you'll notice there's some differences. So, and they can be, we used to see drop downs, and now there are radio buttons that will open a new set of questions. So what I've put here on this slide is a table of the most common option that most of you will utilize if you're filing a Form 470. So the service or function related to this drop down option is either leased lit fiber for internet, T1s, wireless or satellite internet, and then some of you may still have DSL or cable modem service. So most of you fall in that service or function need. In the middle column, the drop down options. Like I said, there's new options, and the first option you'll select is I seek bids for internet access and or data transmission service. Then that will open up a second set of questions, and you'll select I seek bids for internet access and transmission service provided over any combination of transmission medium. So that could be fiber, that could be cable, it could be just regular T1 service. I'm not sure that many of you are still on those types of services, but some of you may be. And then the third option you'll select is I seek bids for internet access and data transmission services, whether offered by one provider as a bundled package, which is what most of you have, or offered by one or more service providers. And so those are the options you'll want to select if you have any of these services in the left-hand column. And here's a screenshot of what it looks like in the application.
Jenny, can I stop you for a second? I'm just wondering, does everybody know what kind of transmission service they're using right now with their internet access? I think most of you are one libraries. So you're probably just getting internet access to your library. So if you're not sure, then make sure to talk to one of us afterwards if you're still unsure, but I can explain a little bit. If you were at last month's webinar, Charles went over the different types of transport services, and so I do recommend that if you weren't on last month's call, you might want to go to our YouTube channel and watch last month's video. Charles did an excellent explanation of what all of those things mean. You know, what type of transmission service does different things. So just a little bit of a summary. If you have fiber, you should probably know it. You probably have a higher bandwidth, and your service provider would have told you that you had fiber, and you probably have more than 100 megabits per second. Maybe you might have a little bit less than that, but usually it's going to be over that. Then if you have the lower bandwidths, like if you maybe have your cable company is providing your service. Some of them are, that's cable modem service. If your telephone company is providing service, a lot of you have DSL. That's where your telephone line is actually connected, and you have to have one of those little filters in there to make sure that you're using, that you have the filter between the digital and the analog. So digital subscriber lines, or DSLs, and cable modems are usually on the lower end, and fiber is probably is going to be your biggest. And sometimes I think some of you may have wireless, but maybe most of you don't. So if you aren't sure, then definitely follow up with us. Send us an email, and we can help you determine what that is before you have to file another 470. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that's important for everybody to understand what kind of service they have and what kind of service they may want to think about getting in the future.
Absolutely. Another couple things that would indicate whether it's cable modem or DSL service versus fiber is if your bill, and this is probably where we would begin if you came to one of us, is to say, let's look at one of your existing invoices from your service provider. If your bill shows that you are getting 100 megs by 25 megs for your internet, that's usually indicative of a cable modem or DSL service. Whereas fiber is going to be the same bandwidth down and up. So it's going to be a synchronous connection, and it typically costs hundreds of dollars a month. So, but like Caroline said, we will take a look at that with you so we know, so we can help you determine exactly what you have, which will ultimately determine which selections you choose on the Form 470. All right, so as we do, we try to meet our goal of filing all Form 470s needed by Thanksgiving. And so it gives us a couple of months to get this done. But if we can get them, the first step is to identify whether or not you need one, and then we can go from there. So, and we can help you determine what services you need to put on your Form 470. And now I'm going to hand it over to Brandy.
Thanks, Jenny. Next, we're going to talk about the competitive bidding process, which goes hand in hand with posting your Form 470. The Form 470 is required to be posted for a minimum of 28 days. And if you filed with us in the past, you'll know that we also include in there a 10-day question and answer period. That way, if any service providers have any questions about your 470 or your RFP, they can ask them and we respond, which allows them to have all of the information necessary to respond to your 470. Once you have certified your Form 470, there's only a few things that you can actually change within the application without having to file a new one. And that would be the application name, the main contact, or the technical contact. You can also make small changes to your RFP, but if it is any kind of large change or changes what you've actually posted in your 470, including things like a bandwidth increase above what your max was on your 470, if you're changing the service address or changing or adding a category of service, that requires you to post a new Form 470. And when we talk about request for proposal, if you filed with us before, that is us referring to your service specifications document. That is a document that E-Rate Central provides. It's a template. You just fill in the blanks, and we are here to walk you through that process if needed. This RFP, it gets uploaded to the Form 470, and it becomes a part of the Form 470. Any changes or updates have to be uploaded into the system, and this takes us back to the question and answer period. Once you've responded to a service provider's question, we upload that question and response into the Form 470 so that all service providers can see it. Here's a couple of items that we want to bring up just so you're aware of what you can and cannot do during the competitive bidding process. All bidders must be treated the same. And this means on the don't side that service providers don't have advanced knowledge of your project. You don't want one service provider to have information that the other service providers don't have, which again is the reason we upload your question and answers to your Form 470. All bidders must have enough details to know how to bid on your request. So for internet access, the bandwidth speeds that you're looking for, where the service is to be delivered, those are things that we need to include. Again, on the don't side, you can't have secrets that are shared with only one service provider that isn't shared with the others. When we go through the evaluation process, the price of eligible service has to be the most heavily weighted factor on your criteria. And you can't have any other criteria that is weighted the same as the eligible cost. Everything else, if you do have other criteria on that form, will have to be weighted lower than the eligible cost. On this slide, we're talking about program compliance. And one thing that is, it doesn't happen very often, but it's something that we all have to keep in mind. We don't want to have any conflicts of interest when it comes to the bidding process. And we've given an example here when an applicant's board member is associated with a service provider that is selected, and that board member was involved in determining the services sought and ultimately the service provider selected. That is a conflict of interest, and we want to avoid that at all costs. Another thing that we want to keep in mind is the value of any free service. That generally must be deducted from the pre-discount cost of funding request. And the free services advisory, it means that service providers can't subsidize the procurement of ineligible or unrequested products and services, or from participating in arrangements that directly or indirectly reduce the applicant's non-discount share. So that's something we want to keep in mind as well. We recommend that you do not accept gifts. There are small value under $20 can be accepted, but you have to track it. There's all kinds of administrative responsibility involved in that. So we recommend that you do not accept gifts at all. And that could be defined as gratuities, favors, entertainment loans, or any other things of value. And now I'm going to pass it on to Patty to talk about the Category 2 budget.
Thanks, Brandy. So for Category 2, just to give an overview and in comparison, Category 1 services are what connect your building to another building for internet service. Now Category 2, that's where the connected devices inside your building for your broadband connections. Last month, Charles did an overview of Category 2 eligible equipment, but just as a reminder, wireless access points, UPS and battery backups, and switches, just to name a few, are some of the eligible Category 2 equipment. And just as a reminder, end-user devices such as computers or servers are not eligible under the E-rate and program for discounts. So we recommend that you start now and making your determinations if you want to pursue requesting any Category 2 services or equipment for this upcoming funding year. Just reach out to us and let us know as soon as possible, and we'll help you begin your procurement before Thanksgiving. So how do you determine your Category 2 budget? So for this 5-year Category 2 budget cycle, which began in funding year 2021, the library should multiply your square footage by $4.50 to get your pre-discount budget. One thing to consider is that if you have any libraries with less than 5,556 square feet, you're eligible for a $25,000 funding floor. Otherwise, you'll multiply your square feet by $4.50. So here's a library systems calculation example. If your library system consists of a bookmobile and a library branch with 4,000 square feet and another branch with 7,500 square feet, your calculation would be 25,000 for the bookmobile, 25,000 for the branch with 4,000 square feet, because that's less than the floor, the 5,556. And then your other branch, you would take the 7,500 times the $4.50 per square feet, for a total of 33,750. So for your whole library system, your category 2 budget would calculate to be $83,750. There's a category 2 budget tool on the USAC website. And there's a web link here to show you where you can get that. And just for an example, we've pulled one library by the bin. You'll just put in their bin number, and then it will show you here on the very far right-hand side what their available budget is. And so for this example, the budget available is $112,500. And next, Kyle will talk to you about document retention.
Just one real quick second. If you do go to the Open Data tool and look up your library's C2 budget, if you did already apply for some category 2 funding last year, that will be listed and it will show that you do have that funding in there. So if you haven't been funded for it yet, or if you're going to return it, that's something to think about if you're thinking about continuing to do category 2 projects. So if there is something that you think you're going to need in category 2, then you need to be thinking about your budget. And Sandra, that's a good question about being interested in applying for category 2 services. We can help y'all file for category 2 services. We do need to give you a quote because we do need to charge you to help you file for category 2 services, because that category 2 applications are not part of our contract with the state library. If you are thinking about doing C2, let us know and we can let you know what the not to exceed amount would be to help you file this category 2 applications. And I know, okay, good. I'm glad I answered your question. Okay, continue. I'm sorry, I interrupted again.
Thank you, Caroline. And thank you, Patty, for that overview of category 2 and category 2 budgets. Next, we're going to talk about document retention. Under E-rate rules, you are required to retain those E-rate documents for a minimum of 10 years beyond the last date to receive service. And since that last date is well after the start of the procurement and application cycles, some of those can actually go up to about 12 years since you initially filed the Form 470, for example. So as a rule of thumb, just retain all E-rate documentation. That includes, funding reduction or denial letters, adjusted service start date letters, invoice rejections, audit findings, commitment adjustments, COMADs. Retaining these documents can help you prevent and better prepare for those items. And some of those documents include the Form 470, Form 471, discount rate calculations, documents on your library's SEPA compliance, again, all program forms, 470, 471, 486, bear forms if you file bears, all program forms effectively. RFPs, which were discussed earlier in the webinar by Jenny, service specifications documents, and anything that would be attached to a Form 470. All records related to winning and losing bids, so bids that you receive from any vendor, essentially when you file a Form 470. These are things that you will want to retain whether they win the bid or not. Contracts that are made through the E-rate process, invoices on E-rate services, and asset inventory, essentially keeping track of the E-rate eligible Category 2 items that you may file for E-rate discounts on. And when in doubt, just keep it either as a digital copy or physical copy. If you want to be extra safe with it, you may as well try to keep a digital and a physical copy, because you never know what may happen with either one. If there's some issue with your digital storage, or if something happens that destroys physical copies, it's always good to have a backup just in case. And we'll be happy to share a checklist of various items that you will run into throughout the year, and which you will, which you should retain, and we'd be happy to share that with attendees of the webinar after we close out the call here. I think we could also include that on the upcoming newsletter as well. And I'll pass that back to Caroline.
Thanks, Kyle. And I probably should have announced this at the beginning of our webinar, but the State Library has renewed our contract for 2 years. So we're going to be around for a couple more years to help you file your applications. And we're looking forward to continuing working with all of you. If you know anybody who maybe is thinking about filing for E-rate and hasn't filed, you might tell them about the library's Connecting Texas program. We're happy to help them. So just going to do a last call for questions. Does anybody have any questions or comments about what we discussed today? You can put it in the chat or just raise your hand, and we'll unmute you so that you can talk. Wow, everyone's being quiet today, so thank you all for coming. And we are going to make the recording of this available in our YouTube channel along with the past recordings. Again, if you did miss last month and you want to know more about the difference between cable modems and fiber and wireless services, I definitely recommend that you go check out last month's webinar. Charles did a really good job of explaining all of that stuff, and also the Category 2 stuff a little bit. So thank you all for being here, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.